Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ChMC Program Accreditation Masterclass. My name is Natasha and I'm Events Delivery Coordinator at the CMI, and I'll shortly be handing over to Emma to begin today's event. If you have any questions during the event, you can use the live chat box to the right of your screen to ask them, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with you later today for those who book to attend. Now over to Emma Jones, ChMC Project Manager at CMI, to begin today's event.
Thank you, Natasha. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first masterclass focused on the accreditation angle of Chartered Management Consultant Award. And accreditation is all about the review and independent assessment of in-house development programs for consultants on their pathway to chartered status. Challenges that the consulting industry are facing or have faced, and the reason for Chartered Management Consultant Award. We were looking to harmonise the inconsistency in the professional standards across the industry, enabling clients to identify very quickly and easily best practice, and to purchase based on value and quality as well as price. The industry itself was looking to, and always is looking to, attract and retain the best talent possible, and to sustain the community and provide an environment for management consultants to interact and develop further. This award was not developed in a darkened room by the CMI and the MCA. It was a collaborative entity which has been developed over a number of years by the industry for the industry. CMI were awarded by the Privy Council the rights to develop and award Chartered Management Consultant back in 2017, and it's been developed with a great deal of input from the MCA as the industry body and MCA members. It provides recognition of consistent, high standard quality in the industry. It's aligned to the competency framework, and Chartered Management Consultant is not a qualification, it's an award, a recognition of achievement of a consultant actually performing to that standard over a period of time consistently. So it involves a lot of reflection by an individual to really put their best cases forward why they should be chartered. So it's based on real experience, not just knowledge and understanding, but a Chartered Management Consultant has really demonstrated that they can deliver. The competency framework itself, as I said, was developed in association with the MCA and a number of MCA member firms, ranging from large and small across the industry. And the competency framework itself, based on 4 key pillars: ethics, behaviour, leadership and management, the consulting environment itself, and personal and professional development. And everything hinges around that competency framework, both in terms of the accreditation of programs and the assessment of individuals. So the accreditation of the programs is really designed for those consulting firms that have a development pathway for consultants, what will lead them really through over 5 years development from starting their career to becoming chartered, and it will provide that development pathway for them. It's recognised by us. We ensure that it maps, independent review, maps against the competency framework, and provides something for everyone that needs to develop or wants to develop in that direction. Once somebody has gained the experience over 5 or 7 years, depending on the route they take, then they themselves can go for individual assessment. And the individual assessment is where the consultants come to CMI to have that evidence reviewed, assessed, and mapped against the competency framework to independently suggest that they are chartered and get awarded that status. To date, we went through a pilot with 10 MCA member firms, and since then a number of other firms have joined, not just MCA members, but open broadly. We've got 15 accredited in-house programs. 3 are underway in progress at the moment. We have over 2,000 consultants registered on those development pathways, and that's a mixture of individuals joining anywhere between year 1 and 5 on the development pathway and experienced professionals. Individual assessments commenced from January 2020, and we have over 480 consultants chartered. We've done a number of assessments, but at the moment, chartered award has been given to over 480 consultants, and it is increasing by the day. We officially launched ChMC in April this year, and since then we've had, as you can see there, over 1,800 expressions of interest in the award from over 930 different organisations, and those different organisations are across the globe, varying in different industries, different sizes, shapes of organisations, internal consultancies, external consultancies, and every end of the spectrum. In terms of progress going forward, by the end of next year, we're looking to jointly develop and launch the Academy of Professional Consultants, which will provide an industry body for the individuals, CPD, webinars, all sorts of services, and more will be shared with that in the future. And on the oversight committee for ChMC, we have cabinet representation from government. Why is government interested? Well, government are a major buyer of consultancy in the UK, and they often procure from large teams of consultants or even consortia. They have a policy, industry, to spend 30% on SMEs in the industry. So they're looking for assurance that they're going to get the right quality, the right caliber, and actually get what they're paying for in terms of management consulting. And ChMC is a way of providing that assurance. These slides will be shared with everybody after the presentation, and a number of these slides have links to case studies around that information. During the launch in April, Lord Grimstone, the Minister of State, said chartered accreditation is a significant milestone for us in the industry, providing or ensuring that consultants deliver quality services to their clients and that they are made accountable and held to the highest ethical standards and behaviour. So within the sector, within the industry, chartered professionals are now, or chartership is now available for management consultants, much the same as it is for engineers, accountants. You know, the consultants themselves are really valuing the ability to demonstrate that they are in line with their colleagues, chartered. Gareth Rees-Williams also said, why would a large customer with procurement function not start asking to know if people are chartered and what percentage of a client's workforce or resources are chartered? Said it's an obvious question. And as we move forward from pilot into the live environment, more and more firms are getting on board. We already have a huge number of consulting firms signed up, many of which are having their programs accredited, some of which are starting with getting their experienced professionals assessed and awarded chartered, and then moving on to program accreditation where it is appropriate. Further firms are becoming engaged all the time, and we are seeing a huge increase in number of firms interested in becoming chartered now, both in terms of program accreditation, which we're focusing on today, but also in terms of gaining individuals assessment. Why? Well, we surveyed those firms that have been through chartered to date, and those that have accredited programs have all 100% said that going through the process and having an accredited program for them demonstrates to their people that they are offering a development pathway. It attracts and helps to retain the talent within the industry and within their organizations, developing them along that pathway. Gives everybody confidence that their program has been independently aligned to the best practice of the competency framework. recognising and promoting their consultants all the way through to chartered, which across the board is great for the industry. We did assess, and we continue to assess the consultants that are actually on that programme. So those individuals that could be anywhere between year 1 and 5 in their development journey, how are they getting on? What does it mean to them to be on an accredited in-house development programme? And you can see there that the statistics shout loud. 91% say that it provides recognition of their professional recognition within the industry. 74% provides independent endorsement of their competence, integrity, and credibility, which are first and foremost within this industry. Provides a professional benchmark, and they're genuinely excited to be on the journey. As I said, finally, for management consultants, they have an equivalent chartership to their colleagues. There are several pathways to ChMC, to Chartered Consultant Assessment. And what we're talking about today is the in-house accredited program pathway, which you can see there in dark blue. But there are also other pathways, independent or individuals that have at least 7 years management consulting experience can themselves go directly for assessment. If you don't have an accredited in-house development program, then the alternative is a qualification route through a third-party training provider. And that would be the level 7 in professional consulting. So there are 3 routes. The on program is for individuals that can be part of an accredited in-house development program, which will take them through their 5 years pathway towards chartered. Experienced professionals, they can come directly for assessment, or we have the new level 7 professional consulting qualification. And there's a lot more information about all of those routes via our website at ChMC. Those that have actually gone through assessment, so the just under 500 chartered management consultants we have now, we survey them continually to make sure, or to check their perception of the experience, what it meant for them. And fundamentally for me, a majority of those that have gone through assessment to date are experienced professionals. They themselves have over 7 years experience of management consulting, but they still found the process challenging. They really valued the opportunity to reflect on their career and understand how they got here and where they're going. They found that it really demonstrated their professional integrity, their commitment to ethics, things that are tacit knowledge ingrained in the way they work, but hadn't really had the opportunity to reflect and think about how I got here. 99% said that it demonstrates their commitment to the profession, and 100% said it recognises their track record and their ability to deliver excellence and credibility to their clients. So all over positive. 86% increased self-awareness, 85% increased self-confidence, which comes from that ability to reflect and understand how I got here. We're going to talk today about that accreditation process, about how a firm can get their 5-year development program accredited and the steps we go through to get there. And wonderful for us today, we have 2 guest speakers. We have Anne Bicknell from Arup, and we have, let me stop this, and we have Mark Keane from IOD Park. Very different organisations, morning both. Very different organisations, but hopefully can share with us some insights into their experience of going through this process. So welcome both.
Thank you.
You have both achieved accreditation of your in-house development programs. Let's start with you, Mark. Can you share with us a little bit about your experience of going through program accreditation? A little bit about what you're asked to do, and I guess the trials and tribulations of getting there.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. I suppose the kind of the starting point for us was why would we do it? And I think the key driver was a sense that as an organisation we're quite small. We have 40 to 45 full-time consultants with associates. We're quite dispersed. We have an office in Edinburgh, one in Sheffield, and and one in Nepal, plus we have a few staff who work from home and who worked from home before COVID as well as now. And for us, the kind of way the process was about, one, trying to build kind of a culture of self-reflection and reflective practice, and also in terms of getting a structure and getting a framework by which our consultants, who all come from kind of different technical backgrounds, can kind of, if you like, learn together, but also can see a pathway towards that recognition of their status, given that they all do slightly different things. In terms of the process of doing the accreditation, I think in some ways it was quite straightforward, and in some ways it was quite challenging. I think what was most straightforward was, our view was, what the process and the program was very much aligned with our way of thinking and working about professional development. So it wasn't just about doing courses, it was much more about really drawing on and learning from and accrediting people's experience and capturing that tacit knowledge. We had a competency framework already, which we were in the process of reviewing. And to be honest, the accreditation process, one of its big values was to actually help us align our competency framework with a kind of an industry standard, recognizing that what we do is kind of not the same as what other necessarily all management consultants do. So that alignment was really important. I think probably the most challenging element was, it's a big competency framework. Identifying the mechanisms by which you might develop those competencies was actually slightly easier than we expected, because we could draw on things we already did. So we were doing a lot of it already. The thing that was most challenging, and I think we probably got the most from, was trying to illustrate how you provide evidence. So providing evidence of a shift and an increase in competence. And I think for those of us that were designing it, and then when we started piloting it, illustrating and showing that you have increased your ethical behavior, or you are exhibiting ethical competencies, was a bit more challenging, but really useful. And the most useful part was the discussions. So I think for me, that's probably the key element, was the difficulty, or the challenge was illustrating how you are getting better at what it is that you do across those range of competencies.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, absolutely. When you're mapping your development program, it's not just the interventions that you provide for the knowledge and the understanding, but also you need to say, as you say, you need to demonstrate how you measure your expertise of your consultants, or your competence of your consultants. How does that map with you, Anne, on a very different scale organization? What was your experience of developing your accredited program?
Yes, so we have the other extreme, where we are a global consulting firm, and we house one of the most diverse range of specialisms. And one of our principles is a membership of quality. So clearly this aligns very strongly with that. And on top of the range of charterships we already house, we also strongly recognise that consulting, or as we bracket it, advisory capability, is actually additional to that. It's a parallel profession. And we often say that there's a difference between being clever and being useful. And actually this chartership recognises the ability to deploy clever people from a range of multidisciplinary backgrounds to solve a problem in context and actually be useful, and to recognise where the client is and what impact is. So we were very attracted by the notion that this is validated through impact rather than just through qualifications and modules completed or anything else. And so, one of our litmus tests for whether we've had impact is whether our client is irrevocably different on the other side of us working there, whether they have actually transformed, or if we stepped away, would it be as it was before? So impact is a really important part of what we were attracted to in this chartership, so that clever people are actually noticing that they're being useful as well.
Okay. How did you show that in your program mapping to gain accreditation? How did you show that sort of evidence?
definitely through, before and after. So we have another principle at Arup, which is called total architecture. And we work very closely with our clients to make sure that not just the people we work directly with, but the systems and processes of transformation shift to demonstrate a longer term impact, rather than just, the small teams or the particular teams that we're working directly with in transformation. So we can point to, areas in the company, in policy, in process, in systems, so that the hard wiring is actually different after us working there. It's a bit like operational excellence, if people are familiar with that concept. Ways of thinking have different outcomes attached to them post our intervention, instead of just a set of deliverables.
Okay.
Different forms of value. It sits very well with the whole concept of wider value and social value.
Okay, and Mark, you said you had a competency framework already. Did that help or hinder in you mapping your program?
I think what it did is it helped to some degree, in that our staff are used to the notion of competencies. I think our initial view was we found our competency framework is a little bit shorter, and doesn't have quite as many different component parts in it, and is a little bit more, I wouldn't say general, but it is focused more specifically on the type of consulting activity. So we focus a lot on monitoring and evaluation, and we are also looking at kind of system change in government and international systems. So it's kind of what we found with when we looked at the Chartered Management Consultant framework, is what it provided specifically was a greater measure of, if you like, the practice of consulting. And in particular things like the leadership aspects, the team working aspects, whereas our previous competency framework tended to be a little bit more individual focused. So I think what we found is, again, it was a very useful way, and what we've done is we've now blended the two together. So we've still kept some of the elements of our existing framework, and we then still can use the same evidence base and the same kind of learning interventions as a mechanism for developing those competencies. So I think, yeah, the key thing it has is this focus on reflective practice, focusing on the outcomes that you are working towards, but also the processes by which those are achieved, particularly within team setting.
Yeah, excellent. And Anne, you said you've got all these specialisms, many of which you've got chartered route for in other areas. So how did that affect or influence how you match your program for ChMC?
That was part of the reason we selected it, because we wanted something that was discipline agnostic, again, to recognise that being a consultant on top of being a professional in engineering, architecture, psychologist as I am, is over and above. So I'm sure that everyone who's watching this will find that if they have some sort of competency or recognition structure, it will massively help them when they're engaging with the process, because they'll have some competencies that they can tick off straight away, but they won't have all of them. And it will just give them, as it did us, the opportunity to do that step back and housekeeping and wider reflection and say, is our competency structure fit for the future? Fit for a future where our strategy is to deliver global and climate level outcomes. Yeah. That isn't just about competencies at a one-to-one or even a team or even an organizational level. It's collaboration on a much bigger scale. So it will give everybody an opportunity to future-proof their contribution structure or their competency structure, whatever they have in-house, to see how fit it is for the future, really.
Okay, I mean, on that, when you went through the mapping process, I'm hearing that it did, but I was going to ask you if and how it made you develop or amend your current or existing development program. Was there much change needed?
Well, as you can imagine, we have quite a lot already. What it did do was give us an opportunity to order it. Yeah. And, to reconcile it and to rationalise it. So that was very helpful. I I think it changed in emphasis. I would say it changed in emphasis more than content. Much more attention to capturing impact, much more attention to the total architecture approach, rather than simply what we've done. Sometimes I feel that when you speak to, consultants, and you say, oh, what have you done here? You sort of get that response. It's a bit like what I did when I was on holiday this summer. Whereas actually what you want to know is what difference did you make and what impact did you have? So I'd say it changed more in emphasis than content.
Right. Okay. And similar, Mark, you were already halfway through developing your competency framework and obviously had the resources to fulfill those competencies. But having gone through the mapping exercise, mapped your program to the Chartered Management Consultant framework, what sort of changes did it then involve in making in your development program?
I think, similar to Anne, the biggest thing it gave us was a review of the overall architecture and how it all fitted together.
Yeah.
So I think, as a smaller organization, professional development had always been kind of an individual talking to their line manager saying, I want to be better at this. How do I, what should I do? Which course should I go on? And this kind of allowed it to have a much more kind of a holistic perspective. I think the other thing it also has given us is a common language across the different, because like we have a lot of people who are chartered in other fields or are in other professional bodies. And I think particularly for our younger consultants, and I think this is probably one of our primary drivers, is for the younger consultants, their view seemed to be, I need to get better technically. I just need more technical knowledge, more expertise in the area I work. And what the program has allowed us to do, and to reflect to them so most of our program is delivered internally by our staff. And what it's provided is getting the people that they look to, who are the names and the senior people in their field, to actually go to and say, actually, it's how I manage the relationships. It's how I lead my teams. It's how I communicate. So in some ways, I think what it's really made us do is ground the program, grounded in actually what we do and the impact that we have and the relationships we have with our clients, rather than just focusing in a similar way. It's not about being clever. It's about how those clever people interact and engage with your clients, what feedback you get from them to illustrate that you are making the difference that is helping the client get them where they want to get to. So for us, it's the whole. It's getting the whole framework, and for people to see, if I want to develop, these are all of the different component parts. And then on the other hand, then also allowing them to have ownership, either through the individual process or with their line managers in a program, to map their own pathway. So I think those are the key things for us. It's really given the sense that you have to map your own pathway, but you need a pathway in which you can map that, and then also ensuring that it ties together all the skills from within the organization and doesn't just rely on go on this training course or that training course and that external provider. Although obviously that is still very important. So it's bringing it all together that's been the most useful, I think.
And I would just add to that to say that if it is a global organization that you work for, or you have people with very different views about how a developmental structure should look, it's a great start for a conversation. And it is that, because even though there are different approaches in different countries and different things are validated in different countries, it's a great start of our global advisory learning pathways development, so that we have a kind of a consistent approach to what we value in that parallel profession of consulting, not just in the professions that we already deploy.
Yeah, good point. And actually, it's done nicely too. I was going to ask how you went about it. I mean, in terms of resources, timing, effort, first question an organization generally asks is, how much effort is this going to take? How quickly can we get it done? And my answer is always every organization has a very different experience. But can you share yours?
I can be very quick and say, small team, 3 or 4 of us for about 9 months. Probably because we had such a lot of content to wade through, and with massive support, shout out to Emma, as always, for the truly collaborative help and guidance and shaping and feedback and constant conversation that the CMI will have with you. But yes, we'd be lying if we said it wasn't effort and it didn't require a budget code. And, you do need some dedicated people working on it for a period of time to get it done. Otherwise, it would just get lost in the detail.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne. I'll pay you later.
I think, again, being a slightly smaller organisation, probably the volume of work would probably be a little bit less than Anne's experience. Our approach, so I'm the co-owner of IOD Park and I was the managing director. And one of the things that I did is this was something I wanted to lead. So I kind of switched roles with my other co-owner and became chair of the company, but also then meant my company role was to focus on professional development. It is also my background in terms of learning and development and action learning and change management. So in essence, there was a team of 2 of us, which I led, and then bringing in support where necessary. And it took about 4 to 5 months, again, with, I'd pick up the phone to Emma and saying, what do I do here? Can I do it like this? Is that okay? The other thing that I found very, very useful is I actually went through the individual process myself. And I think that made it much, much easier because that process and the advice that was given in my accreditation from the consultant who helped just meant that I think I understood what was needed, where I could focus on what was helpful for us and what was necessary for the process. So it took about 4 or 5 months. I probably spent about a day a week on it with support of probably about the equivalent to level of time. But again, it is my background, so that might be a relatively quick process. But I also got, I didn't really have to ask anyone else for permission for a lot of things. I could just kind of share it with them, get feedback with the board as we went through the process.
Okay, thank you. So that's very reflective, I guess, of a number of organisations that have gone through accreditation. Key points I would highlight there really is a dedicated small project team, so you don't lose sight of what it is you're trying to achieve. Recognition that it will take time and take some resources, but also recognition that you're not on your own, and that the CMI are here to help you achieve accreditation. We learned very early on from the early pilots that we are not here to audit you. CMI are not going to come in, and it's not a case of trying to do the cleaning before the housekeeper gets there. We're there to come in and support you and help you develop the program, map the program, understand if there are any gaps, how to fill those gaps and how to get over the line. And every organisation will be different in terms of their needs, and the duration it takes them will be different. COVID has obviously put a bit of a spanner in the works for some organisations. We've had to pause and then continue and then pause and then continue. It's completely driven by you as an organisation, in terms of your timescales, your resources, when you're ready to develop. But we are there to motivate you, shall we say, to get over the line, and also obviously to get your consultants registered on that program. I think also I'd highlight that you both went through quite a intense task of mapping everything you do to 54 competencies in the framework. But I think you'd also agree that it's not a case of mapping individual training to individual competencies. Many competencies are covered by 1 or 2 interventions. So understanding that, understanding how you can not shortcut the process, because there is no shortcut, but understanding how what you do as an organisation often fulfills 80% of the competency framework. It's just an extra 20% that we need to help you get over.
And I would say, added to that, there's no shortcut, because we're just coming up for our first year's accreditation, and we have done our, additional homework that was from the feedback of the first accreditation. So you don't have to have everything polished off. And ours was just about sorting out the structure, probably as Mark said, because we have such a lot of content in various places and processes. And, so we've made some structural changes between the accreditation and our first year reaccreditation.
Okay, good point. Yes, it's not a rubber stamp, you're off, that's it, it's done. It is annually reaccredited. And as you rightly point out, when you're first accredited, you're not expected to be 100% perfect. And it may be when our mappers moderate your mapping process, they will be RAG rating it, red, amber, green. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you're not going to get green across everything if you've literally just developed things to fill in some gaps. So that'll be what they're focusing on their reaccreditation a year later. Not as arduous a task. It should be just a review of what has changed, but also a reflection on how your staff have found working through that development pathway. Have they found everything they need? It's not a case of going from year 1 to year 5 in one direction. You know, everybody that joins your development pathway will cherry pick what they need to develop themselves and to generate that evidence. And as Mark said, sometimes trying to find that evidence is the hardest part, because it's something we just do. It's something we acknowledge around here, but to have it independently assessed, your moderator really needs to understand what it is you do. So treat them like tools, take them from scratch, and take them through what it is you do to develop your consultants. In terms of what value accreditation brings to your organisation, how is it perceived by your prospective talent, and how does it help retain them?
So we know that. Oh, sorry, you go first, Mark.
Go on, Anne. So you started.
Okay. So we know we know that people are already asking for it, and I think it helps to demystify what is it that you do when you're a management consultant.
Yes.
You know, I always say to people, if you haven't got a deliberate answer to that question, then you need to find one, both for yourself, but your clients will ask you these questions. And you need to know, you know, for me, when I'm not necessarily being a psychologist with a client, what am I being? How am I being helpful? What skills am I actually deploying? So it really helps them to reconcile their own identity as a management consultant. What exactly is that? And you know, and we often have our graduates say, you know, my parents ask me what I do for a living. You say, right, great, what do you do for a living? And having a good, deliberate, you know, reflected answer to that question is ideal. So it helps them with that. Great,
thanks, Anne. And Mark?
I suppose one of the, I think we definitely had a period where, you know, we, like most companies, we review and reflect annually, and we have surveys. And one of the issues that seemed to come up, particularly with the younger consultants, are how do I get better? Because I'm not really sure. And I think for us, what this has provided is that sense of, okay, now I understand, in some ways, as Anne said, actually what I do. Because most of them just say, you know, I'm a forestry specialist, or I'm an economist, and you know, and I help organisations. But that's now what this is providing them is a little bit more about, okay, yeah, no, so I help them managing change. You know, I facilitate. I don't just give them the answers. I help them through processes. So what we've done is it gives them a sense of saying, okay, how do I get to become a principal consultant other than just doing this for 20 years? It provides them with what is it that's necessary. And in terms of retention, that's been very important, because what we were finding is we had consultants for 3 or 4 years who then said, yeah, but you know, we work in international development, so I need to go and live in a foreign country for 5 years, because that's the only way. And now what we're saying is, actually, no, maybe I don't need to do that. If I follow this pathway, if I build those skills, then actually I can do this. And, you know, as Anne said, what it really gives them is an understanding of what their job is, which might sound odd, but, you know, our job is not the easiest to explain. And I think, you know, we now do a session, you know, give us your elevator pitch, which I'm sure lots of consulting firms do. Give it to your grandmother, give it to, you know, your best friend's father, give it to your, you know, your partner's nephew or niece. So giving that sense of, actually, yeah, this is what we do, this is how we'll get better at it, and this is the difference that we'll make. And it just helps encapsulate that. And also, again, for us, it's really just puts that notion of reflective practice, that we learn from each other. Even if you're at the top of the supposed tree and the highest sphere, you still have plenty to learn. And, you know, you can learn from people who are very junior as well. So those are the kind of two things: giving people a pathway and almost demystifying and allowing our new and younger consultants to recognize that even if you've been doing it a long time, you still learn. Each kind of particular assignment is different, and you have to manage that and learn from each other as you go.
Yeah, reinforcing that. I mean, obviously, becoming chartered is just the first step. To maintain your chartership, you must continually demonstrate your continued professional development against that competency framework. So it's not a you've hit the final point of your career. It's often a starting point for you to develop from, and independent measure. And I have heard it described. It was interesting, and you saying about people being able to describe what it is you do. And Mark, very similar. And I heard somebody quite recently suggest that they are an organisation doctor, is how they described it to their child. So the organisation has a problem or a pain point, and as a doctor, you go in and you help them overcome it, which I thought was quite nice and maps quite nicely. Obviously, it's a lot more than that. And for those of you that are not yet familiar with the competency framework, as I said, it is available on our website. And if you contact us, we can send you copies. But there are 4 key pillars to it, and one of which is continual professional development, both personal and professional. And it's that whole end-to-end. It's not just about the technical specialism. In fact, it's not even about the technical specialism. It's about what you've both described there, your ability to consult in a management environment and help an organisation go from A to B with your best skills forward. And that's what we will be assessing. Thank you very much, both. Have you got anything else you would like to add?
I was just going to comment on, and forgive me if my phone goes flat in a second. I was just going to comment on at the other end, we have a concept of the trusted advisor. And what this has done, which is really nice, is just remind the people who are, super clever and have been doing this for super many years, that actually there's that humility that says, what is it you do? And unless you do get asked that, you often don't think about that. So it just helps to remind our very senior people that there is humility in leadership, and actually management consulting is fundamentally servant leadership. It's leadership of service. That's what it is. So it's a nice humility test for people as well.
And in both your organisations, your senior leaders are leading the way with doing the award themselves to demonstrate to the organisation what it's all about, and then to champion others, which is excellent way forward. On that note, I'm going to hand back to Natasha to see if there's any questions that we can answer from the audience.
Thank you very much, Emma. So we do have a question from John Higgins. He said there's only 2 years difference between following an accredited programme and general experience. Does this not undervalue a properly structured development programme?
I would, I'll open that out to the 2 guest speakers who have developed in-house programs, and ask them the difference between somebody that has completed a 5-year development pathway as opposed to an experienced professional that can come forward with 7 years experience. What do you see as the difference?
Okay, so a time served is no indicator of anything. I don't mind how long they've taken, so long as they can actually evidence impact. And it's, it doesn't have a cutoff, but it might have a minimum. It's a bit like that concept of it takes a village to make a man. So, the experiences you have in the 2 years difference or whatever else, or you may have had already in your 5 years whilst you were doing your structured development program, and the mentoring you had or may have had. All of that shapes somebody's competence level. And that's why competencies are good, because you can either see them or you can hear them or you can't. So it isn't about time served and accreditations collected. And if you saw my business card, you would laugh because it's a comedy. And I still say you can do something and get the ticks in the boxes for a long time and actually not demonstrate impact. So this is why we like it. It's about impact, not time served.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And Mark?
Yeah, it's interesting for us, the people looking at the 2 different approaches. It's been more about what they want to get out of it. So for some, it's been about a process of reflection primarily, and almost kind of recognizing that they have done quite a lot and that they have got those competencies. They've never just really brought that out and kind of reviewed and reflected on it. Whereas in our organisation, there are those that are newer that just are not sure that they have and feel they need to know more. And what's interesting is some of the latter have actually been working longer than some of the former. So we've got people who've been doing it for quite a long time who think they've got massive loads of gaps, and then there are those people who haven't, who said, "Hold on a minute, I used to manage a mid-sized organisation before I became a consultant. I think there's things in my past experience which actually illustrate that competence." So it's been more about an attitude towards it than the time. And again, I, to be honest, don't really take the 7 years. It's much more about what you've done and the competency that you can illustrate and the difference you've made. So for us, it's been more about the attitude of the people who are taking it forward.
Thank you both. Thank you.
That's actually it for questions. If you do have a question, please pop it in the live chat, or you can contact the ChMC hotline, which is chmc@managers.org.uk, I believe, Emma, is the email address, and obviously the team's there to help you. Doesn't look like we've had any more questions come through, so if there's nothing else that anyone wants to add, I can go straight into the close.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Before you do, I just want to thank Mark and Anne hugely for sharing your experiences. I know organisations find it invaluable to find out, how other people have done it, what were the pain points, what are they up against, should they do it. So amazing that you've spent the time today to share that experience. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So thank you to everyone who joined us, and thank you, Emma and Mark, for your insights and expertise. It's always nice hearing from the people who are actually going through the process. So for any additional information and guidance, please contact your firm's ChMC program manager, or, as discussed, a member of the ChMC team at chmc@managers.org.uk. A recording of the webinar will be made available to all those who have registered for the event, and we'll share the slides as well. Use the link in the live chat to book on to the next session taking place on Wednesday, the 8th of September. So please take a few minutes to let us know your thoughts on today's event by completing our evaluation form. The link is in the chat, and we'll also be sending it out with the recording. So thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Natasha.